Well, it's a great pleasure to speak to you. Um, I am particularly interested because, to be 50 years practicing your craft or and more perhaps, there's so much wisdom. There's, I think, a certain degree of reflection, and in my case, a certain degree of floundering as well as to what happened in our lives, in our creative journeys. And I know from being, because you lent me your home, your childhood home for 6 months. I edited A Reluctant Fundamentalist, sleeping in your parents' bed, in a manner of speaking, but actually, truly, and surrounded by these great images of a real communist childhood, I would call it. Your father was a card-carrying Communist Party person, and your mother was a very firm accomplice and an extraordinary actor, and you were surrounded really by poetry, because Kafi Saab is one of our great lyricists and great poets in Urdu, and also politics. So I was curious really about your beginnings. And at the same time, in Janki Kutir, next door to you, sharing a fence with you, was Shashi Kapoor and his sort of wonderful empire of interesting cinema and theatre, and across is Prithvi Theatre. So what was it like growing up in that cocoon, which is actually the whole world? But what was it like? Did you know you were heading into this world? Did you know you always wanted to be an actor, or did it come how did it come?
Till the age of 9, I lived in a Communist Party commune, which was, a big flat with 8 rooms, with 8 families, and only one toilet and one bathroom for all these families. But I never knew any discord. I didn't know people fighting with each other. In fact, I experienced a kind of brotherhood, camaraderie, which I just took completely for granted. So after we moved away from the no, but till then, what used to happen, Mira, is because we couldn't afford a maid. So I was being shuttled between my father taking me with him to the Mazdoor Kisan meetings, putting me on his shoulders, and then having a ball because all the laborers used to fuss over me a lot, and there were all these red flags, and I used to think that maybe the color red is for party time. And in fact, we had this. Our commune was called Red Flag Hall. So it was these individual rooms and a main room which was used at the party's quarters. So that was one thing. And another thing is my mother had to go out and work because the Communist Party used to take all my father's money and give him 40 rupees a month to run the family. And so at one point, of course, when the kids came, my mother had to go out and work. And so she started with being an announcer for Vivid Bharati. And then after that, P.C. Joshi.
Can you imitate her Vivid Bharati announcement?
what we were very excited is she would say, "Or Girgam se Munni Baba Papu Chunam." And all of us had our ears to it and we had great fun.
But and you were Munni Baba and
Munni, I can't be Baba also. Baba was my brother and Papa.
No, I didn't know and, all 4 existed.
Chunnam and all that were Sardar Jaffri's kids. So we used to be very excited about that. Now, after that, she joined. Actually, I'm getting the sequence of events wrong because she had started working with the Prithvi Theatre. And she tells me I was just 4 months old when she would strap me on her back and take me with her for the rehearsals. And again, it was just something sort of I took so completely for granted. Then after that, when I grew up, when I was about 4, Mom would take me on my vacations to all these tours that she was taking. And Prithviraj Kapoor had made clothes for me so that in group sequences, I would be taken. Oh. Yeah. And so, in fact, I remember Randhir Kapoor, who's a couple of years older, and he and I and a coin dropped, and I went to grab it, and he went to grab it, and we had our first little thingy over there. But that then resulted in my being interested in theatre.
Theatre.
So when I went to Queen Mary's, um, I wanted a doll with blonde hair and blue eyes, like all the children in my class. And my father got me a black doll. So I looked at him curiously and I said, "This is a strange kind of fish," and I hid it away. But this was the kind of nurturing that we had. But I think what I remember most is a celebration of India's composite culture and a great, complete lack of religion. But it was pure secularism, which we just took for granted, and also um, but we celebrated
Everything.
all the festivals: Holi, Diwali, Eid, Christmas, and we do it to this day. So our cultural world became very important to us as a process of osmosis. It wasn't like I was conscious of it even. And then we moved to Janki Kutir, where you've stayed, when my father started working in films. And after that, it was beautiful because we had people like Faiz Ahmad Faiz, Begum Akhtar, Josh Malihabadi, Firaq Gorakhpuri, all as house guests, and making no demands from us at all. But because of that, a lot of other young poets used to come. And I remember looking from behind the curtain and being very curious about this language that was spoken and all that. And Abba would call me and said, "Aake baitho hamare saath." So then I'd sit there and he said, "बशर्त ये है कि आप कल स्कूल ज़रूर जाएंगी. With this responsibility that you will go to school, you can come and sit with us." Children were always included in both our homes. Always. They were never shushed away. कि बच्चों के चीज़ नहीं है, etc. And I used to be very, very fascinated by the language, by the atmosphere. And then Abba started taking Baba and me to mushairas, where we would go to sleep on these bolsters at the end. And always when my father was reciting, then there was this thunderous clap, and we'd get up and say, "Abba ka turn, aa gaya." So all these things were just taken for granted. I didn't even realize the process of how all these values were being built in. Children are so sensitive, and anything that they're exposed to, just becomes part of them. I was not conscious that I want to become an actor at all. In fact, in school, I used to work in plays a lot, and my friends used
And
to
they were
say,
English plays?
English. And inevitably, I played the men's roles because
Just
it was
like
a
me.
girls' school. And so then my friends started teasing me and said, "You would become a Hindi film heroine," like an accusation. And I would say, "How stupid you are. You don't know that I'm interested in literature and I'll become a writer and this, that, and the other." But then when I came to Xavier's College, Farooq Sheikh and I, Farooq was a couple of years older than me, we formed the Hindi Natya Manch because we realized in Xavier's there was just an English theatre group. And then we started winning all the awards, best actor, best actress, best director, best play. And so we would take with us this princely sum of 200 rupees after every college competition. So what Farooq Sheikh would do is because I was in Juhu, which was a great distance away from where my college was. So we'd hire a taxi, and Farooq would hire a taxi in the front and one at the back. And we would say, "Now we know how queens and kings wish," और वही खत्म कर देते थे पैसा. And then it was just lots of fun.
But why 3 taxis? Who was in the one in the front
Wait,
and the back?
no, it was an entourage.
Entourage, or empty entourage.
Because otherwise we had to go by bus. So it was an entourage. That used to happen. और वही पैसा खर्च कर देते taxi पे.
Costumes in the back taxi, music in the front.
Yeah.
So then I want to know how you got to do Ankur specifically. Like I know
I
you
went to the Film Institute.
yeah.
You see, what happened is I watched some diploma films of the Institute, and I watched a film with Jaya Bhadri net called Suman. And I was very fascinated by it because I said, this kind of acting I haven't seen uh, before. And then I got curious and I said, I want to join the Film Institute. And then it was interesting because when I went in for my audition, I forgot my lines. So I said, I
What
was
was
supposed
your audition
it was
item?
about some granddaughter talking about her
Oh, a
grandmother. She
monologue.
got a letter, yeah, a monologue, yeah. So I said, ये handwriting ही नहीं पढ़ी जा रही है क्या है ये चक्कर देखो. And then I went on and I was convinced that I would not pass. And then Taneja Saab looked at me and said, you forgot your lines, but you were so much in the moment that you made up those lines, so we'll take you in. And so that's how we went in. Then I had a ball in college, and I won the gold medal because of which I was getting scholarship, etc. And what was strange is at that time I signed two films when I was still in the institute. One was Khaja Ahmed Abbas's Fasla, and the other was Kantilal Rathod's Parinay. And so, literally, on the heels of finishing with the institute, I started working with Kantilal Rathod. Then one day, Zarina Wahab was living with me because she'd come from Andhra and she had no place to stay. So, Deepak Prashar, an assistant of Sham Benegal, came and he said he'd like to speak to Zarina and all that. I said, of course. And so then he looked at me and he said, why don't you come and meet Sham Benegal? So I had no idea who he was.
You
So
really didn't know who
I
he
didn't know
was.
who Sham Benegal was at all. So then I rang up Shama Zaidi, who I knew him, and she said, see, he's a very good documentary filmmaker, and I'm sure he'll make a very good film. Then I called up Rishikesh Mukherjee, and he said, Aankh band karke kar lo, uski film. And so I went, and strangely, I was dressed in a sari. In those days, I used to feel to be a Hindi film heroine, you have to have a hat on your head, and you have to wear modern English clothes and things like that. And just as I was showing him those photographs, he said, keep these away, we'll do our own. But tell me, how good are you at dialects? And I said, which one? And he said, Dakkani. And I said, yeah, I can speak Dakkani. And he spoke to me a little. I got to know that he was a very frustrated filmmaker because he had asked Wahida Rahman to do it. He had asked Sharda to do it. He had even asked Anju Mahindro. And all of them had said no to the part. And so I came back home and he said, yeah, so you're doing this film and you're doing the next film, Nishant also. So I came
In
home.
the
and
same day?
Yes, on the same day. He said in the first meeting.
And you didn't really read anything?
Nothing. He had absolutely no conversation about acting or what the role was or anything. And I came home and I said, there's some fraud filmmaker who says he signed me for two films. And 18 days later, I was in Hyderabad shooting for Ankur. But let me tell you a very interesting thing. In that interim period, I had gone for a rehearsal to Sham's office. And I was in my torn jeans and a t-shirt and just tied up my hair. And Govind Nilani had one look at me and he said, he wrote to Girish Karnad, Sham Benegal has chosen a rat. I didn't know anything about it. And then after 3 days into the shooting, he came and he said, do you know, this is what I had written to Girish Karnad, and I take my words back. On his own, he came and did that. And
But how did you step into, film acting? You had already done Rathod's film before Ankur.
No, just done
So
a
that's why
couple
it
of
was the
scenes.
first thing,
First film
so
that I finished.
I'd love for us to know, what it's like. It's a very different experience being in theater, on a school plays, and being in all of that, and then facing this highly heightened moment of when it is said to be action,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to harness everything into that moment. Who helped you make that transition, or what was that like?
The Film Institute, I think. the Film Institute was a very important learning ground for me because, we were exposed to international cinema, to the work of Bergman, who I really, really value a lot, and Kurosawa and Godard and Fellini. And that opened up a completely different world. And it seemed like a continuity of what my parents' world was. So it was this alternative world that I was getting attracted to and enchanted to. And so then I did 2 years, and I think that was very transformative for me also. I'll give you an incident. I was always taken in class. I was always taken as this good, wise partner because in what is improvisation, you have one partner and you're the person who plays it, and so I took it for granted that I'm a very
Wise.
I am a very good, noble person who can be relied on, because this was all the time I was being taken by my classmates. So Roshan, and then a time came when Roshan Taneja said it's a character improvisation, and he told me, "You are a bitchy stepmother. Neelam Mehra is your stepdaughter. You're very unkind to her, and let's see where it goes." And Mira, I was so shocked to hear myself being so nasty that, Neelam started sobbing and crying, and I was left shaking after that. Because in the process of acting, you have to delve deep into yourself. And so you've been looking at all the noble and the good bits. And then when you are this nasty person, it's also coming from within you. So you have a realization which is not pleasant at all, that you have this other person also. So it shattered me a lot. And I really think it was to Roshan Taneja's credit that he made me aware of that. Also, what I learned at the Institute was to be in the moment, to not imitate. I think young actors, what they do mainly is if they like an actor, then they think कि ये ऑडिशन में मैं शाहरुख खान की तरह कर लेता हूँ, ये ऑडिशन में मैं आलिया भट्ट की तरह कर लेती हूँ. That's the wrongest way to do it.
No, when I was auditioning for actually Kama Sutra in 1994 in Delhi, I was meeting many young men and women, and one young, very famous actor's son actually came to see me, and I had given them a scene to memorize, to get familiar with, so that we would do it in the audition. And before he started, he said, "I have to do something else." So I said, "If you'd make that quick and then do what I asked you to do." But he had to do Al Pacino in Scarface. And it was interminable to see this man from Lajpat Nagar be Al Pacino from Scarface, and like try to get the accent and the whole thing. I mean, just for no reason at all. Just that he could perhaps be a mimic or something. But it was intolerable. And I've heard it several times, actually, and poor Pacino's Scarface is put out like that. But it's true that even in the schools in Bombay, they teach like that, which is, of course, hilarious. And our dear Zoya has made that into a brilliant scene in Luck by Chance. Be angry, be sad. But once you knew all those ways that you could access these different characters in you, tell me one thing, how did you keep vanity away? How did you let...
I didn't. I'm a very vain person. I continue to be.
It was a question
today.
leading to your cue, baby.
No. I think for actors, the most difficult thing is to get rid of your vanity. Because that is something that is inherent. You know that the camera is on you. You're conscious of what angles are good for you, etc. And it took me a lot of time, and also just in a couple of films I was successful in keeping my vanity away. But I think it's essential because acting is also about humility. And if you are going to cling to what you fancy yourself in, you will never have the humility to step into the world of the character that
And
you have to
actually,
do.
the humility you mean, I also see it as a form of ego, in the best possible sense of ego, where you need that ego to say, okay, I can play the Hira Mandi prostitute, or I can play the negative this one, or I can play Indira Gandhi, or whatever it is. You need ego and adrenaline to actually have the courage to even go there without imitation. But it is the ego that also provides that vanity. That
Yeah,
is so
that's a
hard
very
to
beautiful.
penetrate.
Yeah.
And that for me is a formidable enemy of actors. That vanity, that other kind. Where it's almost something, a membrane.
Yeah.
And that's what I find in my working, and you have done this in my working with what they call non-actors, street kids or first-timers, or even Irfan Khan first time faced my camera. He was studying to be an actor, but he was not an actor in
Yeah.
his opinion yet, and so on. But I love that alchemy between the person who doesn't know how to act, or who doesn't have the vanity of the camera, and the person who really knows. And that alchemy, that combination is, I love it, because it goes for a certain truth that both have to kind of aspire for.
I find it a bit tiresome.
It is very hard for you on the
It's
other
very
side.
tiresome.
And depends on who the, I guess, director is, on how prepared the other
It is
person
really depends
is.
on the director, because I remember I was doing a film with Om Puri, and it was all with non-actors, so to speak. And so I was chugging along, and then came Om Puri after about like 4 days of working with non-actors. And when he was hearing the narration, he started asking questions. And I felt such a relief. I said, oh my God, here is an actor who is applying his mind and not just being a lamb who's taken into it. Sometimes, of course, non-actors, when you just get the face right. For example, in Garm Hava, that Dadi is amazing. But she's used in a way where just her face
You have
is.
to know how to temper it, because real actors or movie stars are movie stars, in my opinion, for a reason, because they take the moment and, in its humility, ego, all of that, and heighten it to a kind of crisp way that the other person has to respond to. And if it's the other person is also an actor of that, it's unbelievable to see you opposite Omji, or Om in opposite Riz Ahmed for me in Reluctant Fundamentalist. It's just electricity, when it's right.
But
And
it doesn't happen naturally. It is for the director, because really the director is the captain of the ship. And if at any time I've been credited with a reasonably good performance, it is definitely the writer, of course, and then it's the director. It can't happen between actors. So the director is very, very, very important.
And in your so many films, are there some directors? Do you think of people? I mean, don't put me in it. But are there directors that are memorable? And of course, love secretly to know what Shatranj Ke Khiladi was like with opposite.
I'll tell you about Shatranj Ke Khiladi, but I have a grouse with a director who I've been talking to for several years, that we should work together. And finally, she gives me a tiny little role that doesn't do any justice to our relationship or her faith in me. And that woman is sitting next to me in orange, Mira Nair.
I didn't want to say that one of the earliest times I met Shabana was she chased me into a women's room in a 5-star hotel in Juhu and said, "What does Rekha have that I don't have?" So हमारी लड़ाई हुई वही प्यार की लड़ाई in the ladies' room. Sorry, Shabana, we are still young. We are still going to go for it. But Reluctant was only because I had that, and I know you could play it to excellence, and I also knew it was just a small thing, but it was at least we would do something together. But believe me, the line is not finished and nor there.
Good. आप सब लोगों के सामने बोल रहे हैं इन्होंने, हाँ? So catch her on this. I have it on camera.
What is wrong with?
मगर ये बताओ.
Oh, no, ये आपकी इंटरव्यू है.
no, I'm not going to put you in a
No,
spot.
no.
That I'll do
Okay, you can ask me.
separately. But tell me, when you cast my mother in that role, now you had
In
seen
Salam Bombay.
in Salam Bombay, and you had seen her in Garm Hawa, where she was the exact opposite. So, how did you think you would be able to do that? There's something about the director that sees that. Huh?
Well, it was not only because of Garam Hawa, then I came to visit her and see her. I didn't come to actually. I mean, I hoped that she would be in it, but we spent about. I spent some time in Janki Kutir with her, like a couple of hours, and talked to her about the whole world of. We were shooting in Kamatipura, which is the actual red light area. There was nothing, I should say, Hiramandi about Salam Bombay.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
it was completely the real thing, but heightened in a way, opposite real, all of that. And she just got more and more actually fascinated with the world. And I think I might have shown her, I think I showed her India Cabaret,
Yes, you
my
did.
documentary film,
You did.
which I had just finished. And she was, and it was all inspired initially from India Cabaret, went into knowing these street kids, these rag pickers, and so on. But there was that Rekha in India Cabaret, which was a certain version, not of Shaukat Appa's role, but it was all of that Madame, Union of Madames I used to go to see in the brothels and so on. So she got into it, and then she got really into it, meaning once I said, will you do this? And she said, I'll love to do it. Then she used to come with me and we used to work there. It was like our studio. And she would come when she was not shooting. And we would do her dress practice and everything with actual madams dressing her.
But Mira, that was that led to great disrespectability about what kind of people we were. Because Abba, poor thing, he would come to fetch her, and then she came down in these madame's clothes.
With
and
that
Abba
pan
said,
inside.
"हाँ,"
Oh,
and Abba said, Shaukat, देख रहे हैं लोग, they don't know you're an actress.
And they didn't know it was Shaukat Yadi
Not
anyway.
at all,
Yeah.
bilkul. She was completely at home with them.
That's why she worked so beautifully, and vice versa. But even the way she takes the pan from the back of her mouth, I mean, she came down to see your father doing that.
That's right.
That's when he couldn't believe it was his genteel wife. But it was wonderful. But of course, now and then you describe your childhood with them. She would be the right person, to throw herself right into this. And she still, I used to see her almost, so often since the movie, and she always loves it.
It- when I asked her towards the end of her life, how would you like to be remembered? And she said, as a professional, as an actor. I was surprised because I thought she'd say wife, or she'd say partner, or she'd say mother, etc. But she said that. And she valued it so much. And my father valued that so much that, when, like, she had a play to do. In 10 days, she had a play to do called Pagli for the Maharashtra state competition. And she had this thing of launching into her dialogue anywhere, at any time. And so she was taking the dhobi ka hisab, and then suddenly she would say, "Utho gire wo bam ke gole," and the dhobi would say, "What's happened?" तो वो जो खानसामा था, उसके सामने वो हंडी चलाते चलाते, she said, "उठो गिरे वो." So he ran out and he said, "मेम साहब पागल हो गई हैं," and he ran screaming, and I went crying to my father and I said, "Mummy, mummy पागल हो गई हैं." So he said, "क्या हुआ?" So I said, "ऐसे बोल रही हैं," and all that. So he put down his pen. It was in the afternoon. I was about 10 at that time. And he took me to the beach and said, "Bete, what she's doing is really important. And we should all be very proud of her. And in fact, we should help her because she needs all the support that she can get. She's got a very short period to learn her lines. So you help her. She's not mad at all." So I felt greatly relieved. And then when she did win the award, I felt it was entirely because of my support. That she had got it. So ये जो और घर में ये भी atmosphere होता था कि सुबह के वक्त, they used to have tea together, and it was a very, very precious time which they spent by themselves. And I used to go and remember that he is giving her the cues for his dialogue. It was this constant kind of support. And she was a very, very, very hard working actress. I used to say, Mummy, आप, she's saying, नहीं, पृथ्वीराज कपूर ने हमको कहा है कि while you're doing a performance, even if you cut your vein, the blood should come out, which should be that of that character, not you. And I used to say, that's impossible. ऐसा सब कुछ नहीं हो सकता था, but she used to get very agitated. Now, she would learn her lines, learn her lines, learn her lines. Then she would wear the costume and walk. And then she'd develop her gait and all that. And these things I would just sit and watch. And in fact, not just watch like that, but walk up and down the house and then also see that. So I think ये सब चीज़ें जो है ना absorb करने मैंने करी और उससे शायद कहीं ये मज़ा आने लगा. And acting, Mira, I think the richest thing about acting is that it's a two-way deal. You give to the character, and the character gives to you. So when I play Lakshmi in Ankur, it's the first time I've entered a village, and it's a completely different experience. And that experience gets added to the actor that I am. Now, the more I expose myself to the arts, whether it's music, theater, drama, painting, even if I don't understand it, but exposing myself to all of that, I keep some of it together with me. And the fact that I've played all these characters and stepped into their world enriches me. And so I give to the part, and the part gives to me. I'm sure you experience that.
Of course. But I have a question related to that, which is that an actor is usually at the mercy or in the hands of the director or the writer's story. You get to do what you get to do because of other people, and we hope you as an actor, or we as, hope that we are creating a moment where we all doob jaye usme, But sometimes as an actor, which is why I'm not an actor, because I thought I have to control, I have to control my universe. I cannot be in the hands, always in the mercy of another person's vision. And I have to, that's what I think I felt, the lack of control, in a sense. That, do you feel that way? How do you fuel yourself between roles? And sometimes I'm sure there are also roles you've agreed to which are not so sustaining, like my film. So how do you? But really, between working, how do you keep sprightly as an actor? How do you, like your mother and your father both were your training schools, as you describe it? How does it happen in real life, Shabana, over these last 40, let's say, years?
I think an actor's resource base has to be life. So when you're alive to everything that is happening around you, that is the fuel, that experience. Because what happens with stars, as you become a bigger and bigger star, you move away from life completely and you get into that ivory tower. And so there's no chance that you will have even the slightest contact with the real world.
I mean, Tom Cruise has in his contract that you cannot meet his eyes. You are not allowed to look at him in the eyes.
Why?
मैनू की पूछो यार I don't but it's in the contract I'm telling you serious
मतलब क्या
मतलब कि वो उनकी belief होती होगी कि मेरा जो है ना juice and all that will be robbed by people who look at me, perhaps that let's conserve it just for the screen. I don't know, but this is real.
Achha, this is off screen
or on set even.
But on set, Mira, unless I look at you, how can I act? I mean, react.
No, the actors can. The actors and director can. Achha. But aam log nahi. I'm telling you. Anyway, this might have changed, and please, I don't know, I shouldn't be talking so much about, somebody I've only just seen and not been able to see. But, it is true. In any case, so you were saying that the fuel is life, and that is fuel enough, depending on how you engage in life. Which brings me to this other thing, because Ankur, was one of the earliest films for me that taught me, in 1974, I think it was, and it taught me that contemporary India could be seen on film in a very interesting way, and not just what we know as the chocolate box, Bollywood at that time, especially. So that gave me the idea that maybe, I always looked to change the world with art, and I knew it was idealistic, and I knew, could it be happening, could it be done at all, until I saw films like Ankur, and I saw things about our own reality done so beautifully, and Nishant as a second one, in both you were so stunning, and I wanted to ask you, I wanted to ask about actually how you took your performative talent and entered the protest zone. How did you become? I remember so well in 1986, the strike. We were both on in the International Film Festival, and you provoked in the most inspiring way as a leader amongst us all actors, directors who were invited, about Sardar Hashmi's bludgeoning, really, by the Congress goons. You were saying it to me the other day yourself. And then, of course, we saw you on the streets in Kolaba. We saw you. Speak about that. I know now from your childhood that you had this around you, but how did you then really seek to take your skill as an actor into the protest space, into being an activist?
It happened when I was working in a film called Par. And I often try to find the character that I'm playing somewhere within the vicinity. And so I was studying this sweeper woman, just to make her a role model for how she sits, how she eats, etc. And we sort of became friends.
In Bombay?
In
Calcutta.
Naihati, in a small
Kolkata.
town near Calcutta. And so then she said to me, Didi, will you come to my house? And I said, of course. And I went to her house, and I was exposed to the kind of poverty I had never seen. It was a small little house with a room, actually, and with no air, no light, and 8 people living in that little space. And I felt that this woman has such tenacity and such ability to step outside her circumstances and be a friend to me. And that seized me so badly, because I felt that if I go back to my world without doing anything for the kind of person she is, it would be a travesty of the trust that she had placed in me, which when she called me friends. I couldn't just think that, okay, I will use her as a role model for my performance. I will win a national award, hopefully, in the bargain, and then I have nothing to do with her. You see, a time comes in an actor's life when you no longer can treat your work like a 9 to 6 job. Some of the residue of what you are playing is bound to be left behind. And the basic thing for an actor or any artist is to be sensitive. And if you ask the question, why? Why is there injustice? Why is there poverty? And coming from my parents' background, it was not difficult. But there was a film by Anand Patwardhan, who must be sitting somewhere over here.
Is he? Oh my gosh. Hi, Anand.
And Anand Patwardhan's film Bombay, Our City, just opened up my eyes, because, you see, I used to see these slums being demolished during the monsoons, and it used to bother me a lot, because there was a poem of my father called Makan, which he talked of the irony of the construction worker who puts his blood and sweat into this building to build it. And then when it comes up, then there is Chokidar standing at the door, and he's not allowed to enter the very makan. So वो भी मेरे ध्यान में रहता था. And then when I saw this film, it became clear to me that demolition is not the answer. That demolition creates only worst slums out of already existing slums, because people don't go back to the village. They come to the village because, in hope, in search of work. तो ये जो डिमोलिशन है, ये ख़त्म करना जो है वो करेक्ट बात नहीं है ना. वाज वेरी वेरी डीपली मूव्ड बाय दिस. In fact, this incident that you mentioned of Safdar Hashmi, that also Anand was responsible, because Anand had given me this pamphlet, and we were standing outside, a whole lot of us, Gautam Ghosh and everybody, with banners in our hand, and the minister got to know, and so he took a side tour and went in, and we didn't have any chance to talk to him, and so when we went in, I was just so much adrenaline that I just went up and I read this on stage, after which there was commotion like you can never imagine, etc. And then it went on, and I suddenly also felt that the film industry was treating me like a pariah.
I'm sure.
हाँ, कि यार ये सब चक्करों में पड़ेंगे अगर इसके साथ, तो ये तो हमको ले डूबेगी. And then all this went
As
on.
they said to me, stigma lag jayega. Somebody said.
बहुत बहुत बुरी तरह से कि इससे तो बच के रहो. To some leeway they were willing to give me, because I was this mad Kaifi Azmi's daughter, but not to this extent. And then I was going for a screening of Genesis, Mrinal Sen's film, to Cannes. And that day, Anand had called a meeting, and I went for that meeting, and there were these slum dwellers speaking with their hearts about where will they go. Their homes have been demolished, which was against all, and no compensation was being given to them, which is what the government had said they would do. And they had decided to go on a hunger strike. And so just instinctively, I said, I'd like to go as well. I was supported by Javed. And without thinking too much, I just joined the strike. And of course, then we were in the papers all the time and stuff like that. And my mother was really, really scared. And she sent a message to my father saying that, your daughter's doing this. And he was in Patna at that time. And please put some sense in her head. And I got a telegram from my father saying, best of luck, comrade. Sweet, so sweet. And then it was so, my mother, she'd come all white in the face and all that. But then she would come and say, Inqilab Zindabad with all of us. I mean, there was just so supportive. And that for me was a very transforming moment in my life, because we were being filled with such untruths, और उसमें ये बोल रहे थे कि ज़मीन है ही नहीं, ये आनंद पटवर्धन ने आपको इस चीज़ों में फंसाया है, और आप तो इतने अच्छे हो, आपकी तो हम इतनी कदर करते हैं, etc. And so I was confused about what exactly is happening, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I had support from Javed. Now, Javed and Tanvi, my sister-in-law, they would come to the hunger strike and sit with us and all that, and then say, अच्छा गांधी जी आप स्ट्राइक पे चलिए हम तंदूरी चिकन खा के आते हैं. So it was all just very.
I was going to say, sitting with you, but never
organic.
Looking like they've never sat for a hunger strike for one day in their lives.
No, but they were very, very supportive. But it's actually Shashi Kapoor who got us this, because he came to our strike. The rest of the film industry didn't come anywhere near me. But Shashi Kapoor came and said, what is it that you all want? And so we explained to him. And he went to the chief minister, who I think at that time was S.B. Chauhan, na? Anand? So he said, we are always there for you, for every cause that you ask us to join. And one of an important member of our fraternity is on this hunger strike, and you have to listen to what they're saying. And so, as carelessly as that, he said, okay. And he said, find a solution. And then the housing minister came. They said, all right, we'll give you water and some orange juice, and we accept all your demands. But when we went up on the podium, I wanted to say we want to thank Shashi Kapoor, and he just slunk away, taking no credit for it and saying that this is your victory. And then I started getting more and more involved, more and more involved. And that involvement, I think, enriched my life in so many ways, because you see injustice around you which is just unbearable. So a time came when I was getting so obsessed with that my career in films was taking a backseat. And in fact, Aparna Sen told me, she said, Shabana, something is happening to you from inside, and your face has changed. You look very strict. You look very stern. So, as a director, I wouldn't want to cast you, because I would want a softer, more open face. And I saw that, and I went and looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, I can see what she's saying, but I cannot keep away from this, because this is the power that I have. And if you have that power and you're not using it constructively, it's a very important opportunity lost. Uh, I don't say as a guru that everybody should do that, but I grew up like you, believing that art should be used as an instrument for social change. And so then I became more comfortable with the two worlds, and it continues. So now I have an NGO called Mijvan Welfare Society, which was founded by my father in rural India, in the village in which he was born. And we've been working for empowerment of women on the ground. So it's education, and then skill development, and then finally being able to earn their own money. What that has done is it has changed the equation between the man and woman, because from being looked upon as a liability, she's suddenly being looked upon as an asset. And so her relationship has changed in the family. And then so on and so forth, it goes on.
I mean, I really believe that engaging in the way you have and in the way I try, that it fuels the craft, the art. It does, and but I also know after so many years, for 40 for me and more than 50 for you, that creativity is not limitless, and that energy has to be, I think, sustained. To it's not forever. You know, we have to understand what we want to do. You know, in what I think of. I mean, we had a very illustrious and great neighbor, Edward Said, and he wrote about late style, about whatever is late, late style, and how one achieves in this moment either a clarity or an anger, actually, or a regret or an anger. And what fuels and creates that late style? I don't know why I'm always thinking or being slightly confounded by it, because I feel that movies take so much and to make and to struggle, and then to, if you are successful at expressing yourself, and then the rest of it, the mercantile, the distribution, all that nonsense that has to happen. And all of it. But so I know, I just don't think it's a limitless thing. Isko bhi haan bol do, usko bhi haan bol do. As a director, as somebody, what I do. But how do you think about this time of life? Do you think about how you would like to use your energy? Do you think about like harnessing it in particular ways, or are you as open and as fluid as ever before?
That's a very good question, because, like you say, that it isn't limitless. And how do you keep yourself aligned? One is by saying, like you said, I can't do every single film. So I am now in a position when I don't have to do a film unless I want to do it. I'm not in the race. So I'm not saying, oh, I should do this film because it'll be good for my career. I should do this film because,
But you
etc.
never really did that.
Yeah,
did
but
you?
even so, you do a couple of films because you feel कि इस banner के साथ काम करो तो अच्छा रहेगा, etc. But I don't have to do that at all. And I choose my roles even today. And in the time that I'm not working, there's very little time when I'm not working, Mira. I'm working constantly, and I think that is important for me also, that I'm working constantly. Lekin I'm not a very analytical actor, so I don't think of it so much till you ask me that question. But I would say that you should be conscious that, all right, it's not limitless, and so you have to hold back, and then you have to work. But I really think life is still the stimulus. And if you can keep focused that that truth is what you have to nurture, that comes from life, that comes from truth. There are no techniques to it. So I don't know of a technique, but I just know that I'm very curious. I'm very, very curious about every little thing. When I meet people, I'm inherently curious. I'm interested in them. I'm not passing judgment. कि अरे वो तो ये है, वो है, ये वो. हाँ, I can be slightly nasty and say कि क्या कर रही है, etc.
कपड़े तो ऐसे ही थे.
हाँ, कपड़े तो ऐसे हैं, अरे ये तो वो ही किया हुआ है, ये सब चक्कर. लेकिन फिर भी, you asked me something about creativity. What was that question?
I said, how do you fuel the creativity between, because as an actor you're at the mercy of a lot of people's vision, and do you feel sometimes that I'm moving the question to what I want, do you feel sometimes that you want to do it for yourself? Do you feel like not necessarily directing a film but making something that is entirely your own, that is what you want to say and how you want to say
It's too easy being an actor. I certainly do not want to be a director at all. Mira, what fascinates me about direction is that you bring on board people that you have respect for, whether they're your DOP or your sound recordist or your editor or the actors, and then they come at different speeds. How do you bring them on the same speed as you without hurting their feeling and without making them feel that it's easy to imitate her, not try and do everything? So how do you manage to do that?
Actually, it's not the same speed. For me, I've tried to be with people who take me further, who don't say yes only to me, whose way of thinking and visualizing, in the case of the director of photography, really takes me to a place I had not thought of before. That's what's exciting. Of course, you don't always have that, but it's very interesting to take people, to work with people who you make bloom enough to take you somewhere else.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
I do it from having a sensibility that looks for it, and I do it by loving my people. I really honor them. I really cherish them. It's not normal, because that's what I feel like between movies. Or now I'm writing a screenplay. I'm just about finishing on Amrita Shergill, and it's hard for me to write alone in a room. I find it's just I suffer, and I'm longing for partners, to take this piece of paper into something that is a realm that is juicy and is visual and is whatever it is, emotional. But it's very difficult for me alone, in this phase.
Beautiful.
So I like to, so that's when I re-cherish my partners in working.
Nice.
But I wonder sometimes as an actor, it's beautiful to be sustained always by the roles and always by the directors, but because you've also been surrounded by so much love of the written word, let's say, of poems themselves, and a raconteur like your dear husband, it's like stories abound and humor also abounds, and politics has always abounded. So that's why I want some, because I was having this opportunity to talk to you and reflect on these 50 and more years. If you actually had yearned to have that control, like say your father had over writing a poem for a day,
No.
and knowing that that poem is entirely what he wished to say.
No. I don't have this desire. I have great respect for creative writers, and I feel that they are there to serve me. So why should I put myself in that position? But what I'm interested in knowing is that when you are on set with an actor who's just not getting it, what do you do?
I have actually no rules, Shabana. Here in the West, if you give an actor a line reading, you can get sued probably, So in India,
explain.
like, see, so many times I work with people who have not necessarily faced a camera. Or, like I worked with a rock musician, a pop music star in Monsoon Wedding, who really was not an actor. But she was just like joy in the camera, man. You just wanted to kiss her the moment she came on. But she didn't know how to say anything, or she didn't know how to emote it. And I also never have enough money, so I also have film stock that is expensive. Yeah. This is pre-digital, and I can't do 11 takes trying to make that person feel good to do what I want, So in the case of this person, I just told her behind the camera how to say it, everything, the intonation, what do you know about passion? Is a line. Let's say, what do you know about passion? She would say something else. What do you know about? I mean, she would have to like almost imitate me completely, and then I'd get the take, and I'd just move on, because it was always a race against time and money and yay and bo, So that's what that actor kind of needed to do what I have asked for them. But most people, you never do that. Most people, you just create a space firstly to play the fool. To let's just take risks before the day of the shoot. So you create a kind of safe space, and then it's a human instrument, like you so much know. I mean, there's no one way to get that rise from the actor. You just have to be acutely observant and concentrated whether you're not. And then to speak with the actor, to talk about a parallel memory for that person, whatever would work with that communication you have. So that's how I keep aspiring for it. But I don't give up until I get it, because you can't reshoot things. I've never been in that way, So it's...
Shyam Benegal during Ankur, there was a scene where I see that Sadhu Meher has returned, and then I cry helplessly. I felt completely blocked. I couldn't do anything. My tears had dried up, my emotions had dried up, and I was so terrified that I couldn't do anything. And Shyam said, all right, we'll have a lunch break. And he took me aside, and he started talking to me about this, that, and the other. And then he started speaking to me about the Bengal famine and this mother who had lost her child. I can't remember what it was exactly that he was saying, but that dead person inside me suddenly became receptive. I became a receptacle of what he was saying, and I was willing to do it. If he had said, oh, calm down, don't worry, that would have been the worst thing in the world. And then when he saw that I was completely ready, he got... So that was one thing that I really... But I don't think directors have that kind of time on most films. And Mrinal Sen used to do something very strange. Mrinal Sen would say, take. Then after he'd do 8 takes, he'd go and touch the feet of the actor and saying, please kar do. I'd say, Mrinal, you can't you do that, he will never be able to speak a line. So actors have different ways, but now there are moments when I get blocked. This is secret.
Yeah.
But I just use technique in a way to get along with it. And then every time I see it on screen, I crib. And if I'm watching the film with you, I feel this is the wrong thing, I'll immediately give you popcorn and say, ye kha lo, wo kha lo, and then move away from that. Makes me cringe. But I'm also aware of the time that it's not all about me. Filmmaking is much more a collaborative medium. And I think the more you realize that film is a collaborative medium, the more you are willing to become more humble, which I think is very, very, very important.
One of the last things I want to ask you is because you've done almost a lot of theater parallel to your film work, and it is such a different kind of acting. Film acting is you waiting and waiting and waiting for a lot of other things to happen, and then when you're asked to come to the stage and you say action, you're maximizing that moment, and you have to, in some ways, get there. Theater acting, you have to be present in all capacities on stage. I've just done like 11 years or 12 in trying to create the Monsoon Wedding musical, stage musical from my own film, and it's really been wonderfully humbling, in terms of the performance acting of, in this case, dancers, singers, actors. Tell me about how do you resist mechanical habit?
It's difficult.
When you're on stage.
It's very difficult. If I would say that I am able to do night after night without getting mechanical, that would not be true. But, if there's something in the writing that stirs me, then that's enough. Because I remember I did this play called Tumhari
Amrita, beautiful play with Farooq Sheikh.
So there's one particular dialogue in which my tear fills up and then it drops, and I've been able to do it in more than 200 performances. And in the first row, just as my tear was dropping, this man said, "Hey!" So in that moment, you're aware of that person, and yet you have to continue. And my mother said something beautiful to me. She said, when you feel that you're losing the audience, which an actor can do, go back to the truth. Don't try desperately to get the audience's attention back. Just go back to the truth. And that has helped me a great deal. Let me tell you a very interesting incident.
As a director who shapes the writing, I thought go back to the truth was a very good way to end this session.
No, but I want to say one thing. No. I want to narrate this incident. So I was doing a play called Broken Images, where I speak to an image of myself. Yeah, and it's in English, the play. Now,
by Girish Karnad.
And we were backstage, and I think we had about 20 minutes left to go on stage, and the sponsor came scratching his head and said, "Madam, only 20% people understand English." So I said, "Isn't it rather late in the day to inform us?" So he said, "Aap kuch Hindi mein kar lijiye na." I wanted to give him such a slap. I said, "This man doesn't know anything," and all that. I got very cross with him. And Mira, I went up on stage and did the whole thing in Hindi. Wow. Translating on my feet and getting the timing right with that thing. I don't know what made me do it. I don't think I would ever be able to repeat it. But in that moment, something happens to the actor. There's some kind of adrenaline flowing. And that experience which you get on stage, you can never, ever get again. So again, it's about, so that you get your cue line to end it, it's about finding the truth.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shabana Azmi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mira. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. eyewitnesses.
Thank you.